A 10-minute break and then come back in for 20 minutes. You guys okay if we just close it out? 20 minutes right now? Be done? Everybody good with that? Okay, good. My session at the very end is different from theirs. It's not content rich. That's not how I live my life. So, but I want to go over a few things with you. I come from a military family. My dad is a retired Army colonel. He was Special Forces Green Beret, and then in the end he was head of the CID, Criminal Investigations Division. My dad's a really straightforward guy, and he's a workaholic. My parents didn't grow up with any money. My dad did not join the Army to get wealthy. He did that because it felt like that was his calling, right? He retired after 23 years in the late 70s. They bought their first investment property in 1982 when I came up here to go to school. It was a VA assumable loan. Those of you who are older will remember the assumables that went away after '89. It was an assumable loan. They bought a little $50,000 house. But their idea was that over time we will buy property. How many of you are kind of in that position right now thinking, okay, over time I'm going to acquire property, right? It's a great idea. So in my parents' case, very conservative, we didn't grow up with money, we didn't have a lot of cool stuff. But if you fast forward to today, my parents own 50 houses free and clear. They're 80 years old, they manage them all themselves. My dad puts the signs in the yards, takes the calls to go show and lease them. If there's a problem with a house, the first call goes to my dad, who immediately goes out to see the problem, to see if he can fix it. It's not unusual that when I call home a few times a week, because my mom likes it when I call home. So on the way home, that's usually my time in the car, where I can think, okay, I can shut down, I can call mom, and she'll be happy. Right? And then dad always tells his mom really appreciates the calls. You know, your brother and sister never call. She really appreciates you calling. So I call, and usually I get something once a week that'll be this. My mom will get on and go, you have got to talk to your dad. What does dad do? Okay, well, so he was out today on a 2-story roof cutting limbs off with a chainsaw. This was one that happened maybe a year ago. So my dad's 79 at the time. So a little while later, my dad gets on the phone. Dad, Mom told me you're on the roof cutting off limbs on the 2nd story with a chainsaw. I know, and truthfully, I probably should have quit doing that 5 or 10 years ago. And I'm thinking, 5 or 10 years ago, you were like mid-70s. My folks' success story, though, look, it's like the true American success story as it relates to real estate. I did a real estate radio show here for about 6 years, and it was a call-in show, and people would call in with random questions, and so early on I learned I had to have a screener because I'd get some ridiculous questions. But what I found was a lot of people were interested in investing. So I had my parents come up. We did the show as a live remote from a Mexican food restaurant. One of my greatest strengths in life is eating. And so when they came to me saying we'd like to do the show, my deal with the station was I'll do it as long as I get to do it as a remote from a restaurant, Saturday morning. And they said, well, we do remotes, but those are specialty events. We don't do a show that way. And I said, well, I'm not doing a show. So they came back and said, okay, we have it set up. So every Saturday at Vivo, I would go and have my Mexican food and talk on the radio, right? So because investing was so popular, for one of the shows I had my parents come up. Now no one came to the show, right? Vivo didn't open until 11, the show was at 10. But for this particular event, Mom and Dad came up, they own all the houses, everybody seemed to want to be like my mom and dad, right? So I get there for the show, and we had like 25 people in the restaurant before it opened who just showed up. And they were asking questions. And one of the questions, somebody here, just my mom and dad, right? One of the questions I asked was, so most investors, it would seem, start with residential, and then they move to apartments and commercial, and you guys have expanded this thing. Why haven't you done that? And my dad goes, we understand what we do really well, and I don't have any desire to learn something new. And the person who asked the question went, okay. Another person asked, how do you know when to sell a property? And my mom looked out, and this was the crowd was a lot of high-tech people who were in Austin, a lot of guys in their mid-late 30s. Someone asked a question, you can tell they just had a list of questions to ask. How do you know when to sell a property? My mom said, well, honey, if someone else is paying for that for you, why on earth would you sell it? And the reaction she got from him was the same one. Okay, thank you. So I have lived this, right? I have owned as many as 54 properties at one time myself with a partner. My folks have 50 houses in San Antonio. I told you they manage themselves. The greatest thing my mom says about it, my folks have never been the kind who are interested in flashy things. My dad drives a minivan. My mom drives a car that is a 1990 model car that has 56,000 miles. So they are not flashy people, okay? What she has said to me was, the greatest thing about the cash flow and the net worth and all of the stuff is that it affords her time with us, with the family. Every year, at least once a year, my parents pay for a trip for my wife and I and our kids, my brother, sister, their husbands, wives, and kids, and we'll go on the Disney cruise. We've been on the Disney cruise like 9 times. We've been to Hawaii probably 10 times, right? And you know, those trips are zero cost to us. Because for my folks, the whole thing is, as they get older, they get to spend time with their family, right? So for me, I look at real estate investing, and you hear all of the different methods, right? I told you, I have gone to California, Southern California, San Francisco, Sacramento, to New York, to real estate investing seminars where people have paid a lot of money to be in the room, and I come and bring my guys representing Austin, selling Austin product to them, just as we're here today. One of the things that's interesting, there was, in case any of you are part of this, I won't tell you who they were, but there's a couple that for years did real estate seminars. They were from here in Austin, so quite often they'd be here, but they'd go everywhere. And the people would pay $1,500 to a little over $2,000 for a 3-day seminar to come learn about a certain facet of investing, right? And we would always be the ones to come in, if it was here in Austin, to bring the product, right, to help the investors identify the product. So here was something that was interesting. Every one of his seminars on day 3, that's when we would be there, he would close with an offer to them. And remember, you got people from across the country. They'd fly in, stay at whatever hotel was being held at. And his deal with them was this: if you would like, I will fly to wherever you're from for $15,000, and you pay the airfare and you pay my expenses. I'll fly there, I'll spend 3 days, I'll hire the realtor, I'll vet out the opportunities that are there, I will handle the financing, everything, I'll structure, and I'll put the best 3 deals in front of you, all of which will be outstanding deals. And when I leave, you will know exactly what to do and feel great about your decisions. These weren't houses, these were bigger deals. He said every time, and he'd have 100 to 200 people at these seminars. He said every single seminar, there would be 3+ people who would come sign up at the end, run their credit card for $15,000, and then he would set up a time and go to wherever they are. The interesting part of that was, he said the vast majority of the time, he would fly there, he would hire a realtor, he would do all the research, look at the product, narrow it down, pick the top 3, run the numbers, set up financing the right way, get it all set up for him, and the vast majority of the time, they wouldn't buy it. They wouldn't buy anything. And I found that hard to believe. But here was his answer. His answer was, Andy, the deal is, for many people, paying the $15,000, having me come out, that scratches the itch. That's enough for them, right? Just the fact that they have paid the money feels like, okay, we've made some progress. So here is always my frustration. You are in, for today, you're in a city where I showed you earlier, we're ranked as the #1 place to invest in real estate in the United States. You're in the #1 city for growth in the nation, right? There is no better place to invest in residential real estate than Austin, Texas. You have, presenting today, someone who understands hard money at a level that none of us ever will, and has lived the life of purchasing 10 houses in 10 months, using our money, and completely changed his stars. Correct? You have somebody else who is writing a book on how to buy 10 houses in 10 months. We released it. And you have the real estate end of it is the team that has been ranked as high as number 15 in the nation and consistently number 1 in Austin, and travels around the country helping investors buy product in Austin, Texas. You happen to be in year 3 in Austin, Texas, of what, if you go back to the 60s, our runs are 9 to 11 years up, and then a 4-year correction. 9 to 11 years up, and a 4-year correction. Our last run was 14 years. We're in year 3. I'm not talking that you're buying for appreciation, you're buying for the income. These are income, but it's nice to look up and go, I got a great margin for error, right? You have everything working for you. My hope for you today is that hearing all of this isn't enough to scratch the itch. Because if you leave here and take no action, then you've gotten a lot of great information, but your life doesn't change. You agree? If your goal is to become, because I heard him from the back ask questions, how many of you own this many or that many? Most of you don't own a lot of real estate, right? You're early on in this. For those of you who don't own any investment properties, the toughest one is your first one. But you got to take that first step, right? You're in great hands. You got to take that first step. And for those of you who feel like, I would love to get to a point where I'm like Andy's parents. If you ask my mom, when's the right time to buy? Her answer is, if someone else is paying for it for you, it's always the right time to buy. Now that was another question that came up. They don't buy in soft market, they buy in every market. And now with 50 houses at age 80, and their kids consistently telling them, nah, you guys are gonna kill yourselves. The only time they buy is when, like right now, for the last 4 weeks, they have no vacancies. People aren't running their ACs, they don't get a lot of calls. My dad's hanging out at home more, and my mom has had it. So she sends dad out to go find another project. Do you think I'm kidding them? That's exactly how 51 will happen. Because they will say, we're not buying anymore, and then mom will get mad at dad because he's hanging out too much and doesn't have anything to do, and they'll go find something that needs a lot of work, and off they'll go to buy the next house. And that's how 51 will happen. And I can tell you because that's their world. If you want to be like them, my advice to you is take action. Okay? Thank you all. I appreciate all of you coming. You have the speakers in the back. You have my guys are now going to set up out in the hallway at different tables so that there's plenty of room if you want to talk to them. If you are ready to get started, we are thrilled to help you. Okay? Thank you all for coming. We appreciate you.